CRT collecting scene? Given that I now had it in my possession, and almost nobody in the scene knew yet, I had a wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime ship posting opportunity. I wanted to see how the scene would react if the great white whale of the hobby fell into hands unworthy. So, I made a burner profile with a cringy but believable profile picture, joined a Facebook group, and started posting.
What is the biggest cert ever made? Sony PVM 4300 or the KX45-1? Thanks, I'll get that one. No, you won't. Buying PVM 4300 KX45-1, message me PLS, thanks. You all see that this guy wants to buy a PVM 4300. Thanks for the help, guys, I found one. Is that what I think it is? Runs this an actual PVM 4300, $100,000 TV with a cheap emulator and HDMI converter? I take it back, join my Discord, friend request, private message, join my Discord. I don't believe this set is yours. Join my Discord, it doesn't look like 43 inches, does the man? I love you, tickled screen and other treats. Well, no wonder we're losing our ship. This is the funniest setup ever. That thing will see nothing but HDMI to composite for the rest of its life. As it was destined to be, he probably has no idea what he's found. LOL. TBD owes shank money. Fix the picture, hook a real Nintendo to it. Where, how, what, when, Meridian, why now? Are you using a cheap emulator and converter? My Discord. Worse, that's a Retron 5. I'm irrationally mad they have that TV with that quote console unquote. Anyone have a forklift I can borrow? Starting my heist plan. You son of a if you've already had that 4300 for a couple weeks now and have just been setting up an elaborate troll, then goddamn that is the greatest setup and execution I have seen in 2+ decades on the internet. Bravo.
One last story I'd like to tell, and that's about our hero on the ground, Abib. He really was the boots on the ground that made all this happen. But who even is he? Without even knowing me or my channel, he volunteered to help us start. I knew he was a game developer, but I didn't know much more than that. Well, a few weeks after it all went down, Bayonetta Origins, Cereza, and a Lost Demon was announced, and Abib as its director. That's right. He made all this happen during the final months leading up to the release of a game he was directing. The game was a passion project that received critical praise, but not as much attention as I think it deserved. I can't thank him enough, and if you think he's a hero too, make sure to go follow him and let him know. Making this video happen was really expensive, and it took a lot. I still cannot believe I was able to find this massive mythical TV and move it halfway across the world. I've also reached out to other members of the CRT scene to visit to take photos and videos of their own, so expect to see more of this TV on other channels and around the internet in the coming months. The KX45-ED1 is truly a special piece of history, and I want to do what I can to preserve and share. Thank you so much for watching and making this possible, and I will see you next project.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this sad little security camera monitor here, and we're going to be fixing it up. I featured it on a second channel video where we figured out that while it works and is very feature capable, it has some serious screen burning. So today we're going to actually fix this thing by swapping the CRT, and maybe if that works well, doing an RGB mod on this thing as well. So without further ado, let's get right to it. What I really like about this trash brick monitor is that the boxy shape of it just makes it really easy to, well, store that it's stacked up on top of it, and the convenient carry handles mean it's really easy to move around. But in addition, we figured out in the second channel video, this thing is a multi-format monitor as well, so full PAL and NTSC support. And as I mentioned in the intro, intro, the jungle chip that's inside of this thing actually has the capability of having an RGB input because, well, originally it was designed for televisions with on-screen displays, but probably SCART, and that's not used on the set. So that means specifically that an RGB monitor is possible. Now, when it comes to this burned-in CRT on here, I didn't really dive too far into like what the pinout was on the back and how compatible this was going to be with other CRTs taken from another monitor. But judging from the fact this monitor is pretty late model, I'm thinking that this CRT is going to be fully interchangeable with any other 13-inch monitor or TV that is you find on the side of the street. And that is exactly what I have to hopefully bring this thing back to life. And you probably are asking, what am I going to use to swap into this thing? Well, a CRT from this very sad little television, which interestingly looks, or is, exactly the same as the TV that I swapped that Chinese modern CRT guts into. This sad little television was a rescue and, well, look at it. It probably spent some time outside. It's really dirty. It's missing its power cord. Someone obviously cut that off. And looking at the CRT, I don't see any burning, which is a good thing, but there is a bunch of paint on here. First things first, I'm going to move this thing off the bench, and let's open up the dirty TV. Now, even though it's in rough condition, I don't want to risk scratching the picture tube, so I'm going to lay it on its face like this, but on that cloth. And I've donned some gloves, because inevitably this thing is going to be gross inside. There is evidence of grossness. And there's the power cord that someone snipped to, I guess, get the copper or whatever. I don't know the specifics on this monitor, like where it was found. A friend of mine had it and gave it to me for this express purpose. So because the cord is cut, I have no idea how well this thing works, if it works at all, but it doesn't really matter because, well, we're taking the CRT and the rest of it will be recycled. Now, if you do find one of these Philips Magnavox sets floating around on the street, it is a decent little TV. It's got composite input on the front only, by the way. The back only has RF. But unlike the security camera monitor we're going to be putting the CRT into, this thing does not support PAL. Interestingly, it actually sort of supports PAL. If you give it a 50 Hz signal, it actually shows the picture properly, but there's no color decoding at all. And it's really kind of lame because I looked up the chip that's in here. It's a Philips chip. And unfortunately, it has the capability of showing PAL, but Philips saved 30 cents by not installing a few components that prevent it from actually decoding the color properly. In addition, if you have one of these and you're thinking about RGB modding it, it's not possible because this is quite a late model set where the on-screen displays are generated right inside the equivalent of what the Jungle IC is. The microcontroller, the Jungle IC, on-screen displays, everything is integrated into one single chip. And that just means there's no external RGB inputs on it that allow you to, well, do anything with it. There's one final screw here, which is going into the flyback. I think it should be good to go for lifting this off. There we go. Well, kind of as I suspected, this thing inside looks, it's not like 0 hour, but it's low hour. There's just not a lot of evidence of use on this because there's not a lot of soot and stuff in here. Now, please remember, do not work inside CRTs if you don't know what you're doing. There's dangerous things in here, especially mains voltage if you have it powered up and plugged in. Not to mention, of course, the CRT is in a vacuum, and that is a risk as well if you break it or something like that while working on it. So this video is purely for entertainment purposes only, so do not work inside of these things unless you absolutely, positively know how to do so safely. So, next step, pull all the guts out of this thing and remove the CRT from this cheap plastic case. This particular set seems to use bolts here to hold the CRT in, so I'm going to use my ratchet here to get these out. Alright, so the bolts are out, so this chassis is loose. And we're going to pull off this ground lead right here. And then what we have here, this blue wire, has to do with the degaussing coil that's right here. So we got to unplug that from the main board here. There we go. And with the neck board high voltage anode held out of the way, the last thing we're going to have to disconnect is the deflection yoke there. So let's just come off the board, like so. And now the CRT should be free to come out. So lift it from the tabs. Do not lift it from this part here. And this should be free. There we go. Whoa, oh dear, that almost fell on the floor. Okay, so looking at this CRT here, we could probably take off this degaussing coil because I have a feeling the other set has one, and we'll just reuse that one. So this is taped on with really sticky, gross tape. And the way this works is when you first plug in these types of cheap sets, what it does is it energizes this at mains voltage, so directly connected to the AC line. which gives you 60 hertz in North America here of an alternating magnetic field that goes back and forth, back and forth. And then what happens is there's like a varistor or a thermistor that's on the board that as it warms up, the current that's going to the coil gets less and less and less. So that alternating field gets weaker and weaker and weaker until it's completely gone. And that has the effect of canceling out any stored magnetic fields that might exist in the front of the set that can cause color distortion. So that's what this is, and you pretty much need that for a color set, otherwise you're going to be left with some color distortion. Ugh, this tape is sticky. When you move the set around, because you're turning it against the magnetic field of the Earth, and you also need to cancel that out. So that degaussing coil is helping with that stuff. Now this stretched wire that goes across the CRT on this matte surface and this black wire here, this is the ground of the capacitor. Because remember, this thing is a big capacitor. This is one of the leads right here that goes to the inside, and then this is on the outside. The glass is like the dielectric insulator, and you need the ground here connected to the electronics so that this can generate high voltage properly. And this matte surface here is actually like a conductive paint. It goes all the way around the CRT here, but see, it's not right here where that's just glass. And it's not right here because obviously if it's too close to there, you can actually get an arc between the ground and the high voltage anode connection. And I think that's where you might get arcing occasionally, is if you have some built up soot or whatever that might be slightly conductive here, you can actually get some arcing under the cap. So that's why occasionally cleaning this area with the CRT off, of course, and fully discharged can solve some of your arcing issues. Now when it comes to compatibility of tube swaps, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. The implosion band, which is this metal band around the set here, has these mounting tabs on it, and CRTs can mount in various different ways. Sometimes it uses tabs, sometimes there's like a strap that goes around the CRT and holds it in. Well, if it's a set that's using tabs, like this one, the other picture tube needs to have the same kind of tabs, because occasionally they're mounted on the front of the implosion band. You can see on this one, they're mounted towards the back or towards the neck here. We tried to put this CRT into a set that needs the tabs on the front. Well, obviously there's going to be a spacing issue and actually won't fit. If it's the other way around, you'll end up with like a big gap in the front of the set, and that doesn't work either. Now, if that security camera monitor needs a CRT with the tabs mounted towards the front here, not all is lost with this CRT and that monitor, because we can use a spacer and longer bolts to theoretically get that mounted. Looking at this whole assembly right here, we have the deflection yoke right here, so this has horizontal and vertical deflection, which connects to these wires here. Incidentally, this monitor does not have a little cover over this, but the horizontal deflection is actually relatively high voltage on color CRTs. So you really, really need to avoid touching this area while the set is running, because you can get a nasty zap. Anyhow, this deflection yoke on here is been set up by someone at the factory technician. There's little spacers and things in here just to get it aligned correctly, because moving this around has a big effect on the geometry of what you're seeing on the front of the CRT. Also, the convergence can be affected as well. So ideally, if you're doing a tube swap, you don't want to touch this if it's possible. The problem is some other sets require different impedance and things on the deflection yoke, and you cannot just reuse the one from the old monitor, the one you're taking the tube out of. You have to take it off and use the one from the monitor that the CRT is going into. That's to ensure compatibility. In addition, this assembly up here is the convergence assembly, and this has been adjusted by the technician as well. Well, the problem is to get the yoke off, we have to take that off, and then put in all that together in a way that presents a good image. It can be a little bit tricky, especially for someone who's a novice and hasn't done that before. Ideally, if I've done tube swaps in the past, I found that I had to swap the deflection yoke, but for the convergence assembly, I had to take it off, and I had to mark where it was exactly, take it off, and put it exactly back in the same position, but using the deflection yoke from the monitor that the CRT is going into, and I was able to get it working, but I still had to get this thing positioned exactly right with those spacers and stuff like that, because every deflection yoke is slightly different. Remember, it's round coils and things like that, so the shape of it and the position and stuff is going to vary from one monitor to another. And then the final thing to worry about for compatibility is the connector on the back of the CRT here. You have to make sure that this is the same from the donor monitor or the donor CRT like this one into the destination monitor that we're trying to fix. I'm pretty sure, well, I'm 99.9% positive this is going to be the same as the monitor this is going into, but I can tell you for sure that this CRT will not work in something like Commodore 1084. That's a higher resolution CRT and it has a different connector on the back here. It's not compatible. But I found that like 13-inch TV style monitors, low resolution things, generally are all compatible. In fact, I know for sure that the monitor or this CRT out of that Magnavox monitor works, for instance, perfectly in a Commodore 1702 monitor. It's fully compatible at least with the connector here. I'm not sure about the tabs and the other things, but electrically you can plug it in here and it does work. Alright, so let's see how this thing looks on the front. Super duper filthy, but I'm going to get this thing clean first of all. I want to see if there's any scratches in here, because I really don't want to put a CRT in the other monitor that's got scratches. That's going to really bug me. Alright, so good old Windex to the rescue here. Let's get this off, and let's also try to get this paint off of here. Ooh, I don't know. There might be a scratch or two. Oh no, that paint came right off. But how did this paint even get on here? Wow, just using my thumb with these rubber gloves seems to be cleaning it all off. I just want to make sure we don't have any scratches in the glass. Glass is a pretty hard material. It's not easy to scratch, but what can scratch it is concrete. If you lay this TV or whatever face down, because of the bulbous surface and the curved surface on here, the bulbous surface can result in the middle part of the screen here touching the concrete, which will, well, very easily scratch the glass. And that is not something you can just take care of very easily. There might be ways to polish it or something like that to get that off, but that type of glass expertise is something that I don't have. I've tried using various types of polishes and abrasives and things, and nothing has ever really resulted in an improvement. What I can say though is that this looks amazing. Yes, now that the paint's gone and all the filth that was on here, this little CRT is looking super awesome. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to clean the back of the CRT here, especially around the anode connection here, just to make sure that we have a nice clean back of the set. And there's a little bit of soot on here, that came from use and stuff, but overall it's actually pretty good. I'm going to say that this thing is relatively low out. We don't need the Magnavox sticker anymore because, of course, this is not going into another Magnavox. Make sure when you clean it, you don't use anything abrasive because you don't want to take off this dag coating, this paint that's on you. That matte paint, remember, has to be there. It's part of what makes the CRT work. So don't take this off. Next up, I'm going to take the outer cover of the security camera monitor completely off. Something I didn't do in that second channel video. I only had the back cover off. I'm going to take obviously the entire surround off as well to get the CRT in and out without too much difficulty. One negative about the security camera monitor here is it doesn't have any geometry controls on the outside of the monitor, so there's no easy way to adjust that stuff without having to take the whole cover off. I kind of wish it had some more controls on the back here, just so I could adjust that, but that's not going to be the end of the world. It's going to be really nice to have a good working multi-format monitor in a very portable and easy to move around case like this. Back cover removed. Now, great. Okay, I know you can't see this, but I can see that the mounting tabs that are on the CRT in here are the same as those, so there shouldn't be any problem. And definitely this connector is the same as well. Looks like to get the outer cover off, there are 6 screws on the bottom, and then there's some that are around the front bezel. Okay, I think all the screws are out. Whoa. Okay, I think I took too many screws out. The whole thing is very floppy now. Top tip when you take this thing apart, if you have one of these, don't take this screw out or the one on the other side that's in the front bezel plus the 2 on the bottom, because that's what holds the whole CRT in. And now it's it's floppy. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to get this thing all back together again. And to make matters worse, I left one of the screws on the bottom, so the top cover doesn't come off, and now the whole CRT is loose. So let me try to solve the problem that I just created with this shenanigans. So there it is. That's the inside of the security camera monitor. It's quite serviceable, lots of space and stuff in here, and it's nice and solid even when it's with the cover off like this. So as a reminder, to get that top cover off, there are screws on the bottom. There are 2 on this side, 2 on the other side, and then there's this screw, this screw, this screw, and another one like this on the other side, and then that top cover comes off. You don't take off this screw here, the 2 that are on the bottom around the surround, or the one on the other side, because that's what attaches the CRT to the rest of this. So taking a look at the CRT part number here, we have A34AGII3X22. And on the one that we took out of the TV, we have A34AGII3X95. So the part number is almost identical except for the last 2 digits. I don't know what that means.